Hey folks, it's Marvin Cash, the host of The Articulate Fly. On this episode, I'm joined by Curtis Graves, Director of Product, and Jim Kershaw, Design Director at Grundens. Curtis and Jim share Grundens' design philosophy, discuss new and upcoming products, and share their refreshing approach to connecting with customers. If you want to understand what makes Grundens tick, this episode's for you. But before we get to the interview, just a couple of housekeeping items. If you like the podcast, please tell a friend, and please subscribe and leave us a rating and review in the podcatcher of your choice. It really helps us out. And check out our Patreon community. It's a great way to support the show and our partners. We have everything from discounts on tying materials and guide trips to small group classes. And a shout out to this episode's sponsor. This episode's sponsored by our friends at Norvise, and their motto is, tie better flies faster. And they produce the only vise that truly spins. The Norvise team continues to rack up the miles. Next stops are the Fly Fishing Show in Pleasanton and the Texas Fly Fishing and Brew Festival in Mesquite. You owe it to yourself to drop by the Norvise booth to see the only vise that truly spins for yourself. Not going to be in Pleasanton or Mesquite? No worries. Norvise's entire 2024 show schedule is up on their website. Head over to www.nor-vice.com today to see if the Norvise team will be coming to a town near you. Now, on to our interview. Well, Curtis and Jim, welcome to The Articulate Fly.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
Thanks, Marvin. It's really exciting to be here.
Yeah, I'm super excited to have you guys on. And we have a tradition on The Articulate Fly. We like to talk about having our guests share their earliest fishing memory. And I guess, I'll kind of traffic cop this a little bit. I don't usually do two-person interviews. I'll say Curtis go first and then Jim can go unless you guys want to change the order.
No, that works. Go ahead, Curtis.
Okay. Well, my earliest fishing memory, I think I grew up in Eastern Carolina and not far from you. And my first memory was catching bluegill on cut hot dogs with my granddad. And it was pretty interesting when we had there was a dock kind of down near the house. It was like neighbor's property and there was a pond, and we'd just go out there and like grab a hot dog, put it on a hook, and fish it under a bobber. And kind of from that point, never really looked back. Here we are, like 40 some years later.
Yeah, that's pretty awesome. That's pretty similar to me. I've got actually a picture here in my office of fishing for trout on a cane pole with my grandfather in the mountains of Virginia. And he's got one of those old school aluminum worm boxes on his belt, and he's wearing we didn't call them wellies because they weren't that fancy back then, but basically knee-high rubber boots.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
How about you, Jim?
It's a good question. I've been racking my brain on it a little bit. I'd say probably my earliest was actually surf fishing. So surf fishing with my dad, and my brother, really just out. Probably the most, I guess the area where I would think most is kind of out by Edisto Island. So I grew up in the Carolinas as well. And just, putting on bloodworms or shrimp and just tossing it out there and hoping for the best, like trying to go, at that time, waist high for, going into surf was like, it was treacherous. It's like, oh, I don't know if I can go any deeper than this. And you weren't really casting that far. Sometimes Dad would cast for me, but just the excitement of just watching that rod just kind of hit a little bit and trying to determine between, a wave and a strike, was just always awesome. And that's been a tradition. We try to do, some surf fishing or get together ideally once a year, and I've been doing it since. And it's been awesome to be part of an industry that we love to, do stuff outside, which is great.
Yeah, it's always funny because I think, people in the western part of the state, it's always easier for us to get to the South Carolina coast than to do that 8-hour drive all the way out to the kind of what is a kid growing up I thought of as kind of the traditional part of the North Carolina coast, like Atlantic Beach and Emerald Isle and places like that. And it's interesting too, I know both of you have slightly different paths in the way that you got to Grundens. And, Curtis, do you want to kind of talk us about kind of how you ended up being the product design guy at Grundens?
Yeah. Back up on the bloodworms. I remember having a distinct fear of bloodworms as a kid. and we'd go down to Rudy Inlet, and my dad had this Zebco stainless steel Zebco 33. I think he probably still has it, but it's I would not touch a bloodworm to save my life when I was a kid.
Terrifying.
Yeah, terrifying. I was like, this thing could eat me. But yeah, I think on a journey, I guess I guess to clarify, I'm product director. I'm more of the strategy guy. Jim's on here because he's the design guy. He does like all the hard work. And I'll let him cover himself. But I guess, this goes way back to working in retail for me when I was, I worked in the bike shop in college. And I really worked in a bike shop from the point that you could have a job. And I was old enough to like sweep the floor and put beach cruisers together. I met the Trek product manager at a clinic one night. The rep brought in the product manager for one of the bike lines. I can't remember exactly which line it was at the time, but likely it was like a mountain bike line or something. But there was a chance that there was it was basically an eye-opening moment of like, this was a job and like that you could do as an adult. And for people that worked in the industry, there was a path to get there. So I guess from that moment on, it was like, this is what I want to do. And, I even changed my major to go get some background in like economics to like be a little more business savvy coming into this thing. And from there, it was like, just figure out a way in the ground floor at a company. And I started out answering the phones as a temp at Solomon in the ski industry because it was fairly adjacent to what we'd been doing. And it was an open role that paid, and honestly, it paid like $12 an hour with no health insurance benefits. And the job ran from October 1st through April 1st, essentially. So it was like, we knew that April 1st you're out of work, but you had essentially 6 months to make hay and build relationships. And I guess from that point on, I turned it into like basically a full-time customer service job, then into like the product role for the guy, helping the product guys out by tuning skis and going to demos and just kind of doing the grunt work for a few years there. And the company relocated, and when the company relocated, that was kind of my in as a product manager. And I guess from there, a little bit of a long-winded story, but it's relevant here. I went to Black Diamond, kind of from Solomon, to get closer to the R&D process. And then the door opened up at Sims Fishing in Bozeman, Montana, and it was like Montana was on the table and a product job in fishing, and it was like, wow, this is like kind of the stars aligning for like the foot into the fishing world. So that's honestly where I picked up all of my apparel, like experience. I've been a hard goods guy all the way up to that point. And, so I put a few years in Bozeman and then, like I'd always known who Grundens was, just from, I guess the industry and also just kind of seeing their stuff on the coast. And, when the crew at Grundens reached out, it was really interesting, like, wow, these guys are building a sport fishing collection. There's an opportunity to come land at this brand and go build something. And I was beyond stoked, to go take that opportunity to jump on board and basically take this brand from, where it was. And, we've tripled the business almost since 2017, when I joined the company.
Yeah, and so you left probably about 3 or 4 years before the Vista acquisition of Sims?
Well, I guess closer to like 5.
Okay.
I guess I've been at Grundens 6 years just that last month. And I think, that deal went down last year. So yeah, I think, when you work inside of a company, you're really acutely aware of what's happening. I think from potential transactions, and you're always trying to get things in shape, right? Like it's like your task, our job is tasked with the health of the business. So like we have a little more visibility into what's going on in the long haul, or like kind of the bigger picture behind the scenes with management and just generally just kind of how companies are funded in the back end.
Yeah, very, very neat. Kind of, if you got to talk about bloodworms, I'll tell you that my first mountain bike was a Trek 930.
Nice.
That I bought with I think that probably my first tax refund for my first real job out of school. I went and bought that bike. So
that's awesome. Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah,
there's some kid out there that put that thing together.
Yeah, well, it's still hanging in my garage, and then I graduated to a Le Mans road bike, which I barely rode because I moved from Atlanta to Charlotte and was afraid I was going to get killed in the traffic. So, um, but Jim, how about you? How did you make your way to Grundens?
Yeah, that's a good. It's I guess kind of in some ways a little similar of trying to navigate my way. So, um, I went to school up in Boone at Appalachian State. I had no idea what I wanted to do up there. I love to fish. Kind of went up there initially for sports, tore some ACLs, and decided to this time to focus on a career. So I ended up stumbling into this major called industrial design. And that industrial design, I really just wanted to take metal shop and blacksmithing. And it was like, in order to take this class, you need to pursue this major. And I'm like, cool, great. So it was really about, there it was kind of this cutting my teeth on what design was. From a traditional sense, Appalachian State's very good at in a furniture sense of school. And during my time, they were kind of some of the guinea pigs of first coming out for product. And we had a little bit more of a sponsored studio program with Irwin Tools, which was based out of Huntersville, at the time. And that turned into an internship, which turned into a full-time role, which got me cutting my teeth in hard goods from a design standpoint, but also focusing on tradesmen and, the construction environment. So it was all about durability. It was all about performance. It had to live in nasty conditions. And it was all about field research. And that experience there kind of influenced how I approach things, all the way down the spectrum. So spent time there and realized, I've got a passion for the outdoors. I don't know how many jackets I have. I don't know how many backpacks I have, but there were a lot, and there still are a lot. And I knew I wanted to get into that, but I couldn't sew. I didn't really know much about fabrics at all. I couldn't tell you the difference between a nylon and a polyester, or what a woven versus a knit was. And so this opportunity came up to move to Baltimore, to work for a brand called STX for lacrosse and ice hockey gear. And it was a great opportunity to blend what I knew from hard goods and creating durable gear with learning how to do soft goods. And so I focused mainly on protective equipment there for a few years for both STX and Nike. And it was a great way to kind of cut my teeth into soft goods. And then from there, I realized, hey, this is great, but I didn't play lacrosse growing up. I played soccer mostly and some football, and realized I wanted to kind of get back to something I really enjoyed from a root standpoint, and kind of found my way all the way up here in Vermont at Orvis. And it was a great time to join the crew there. We built a lot of great stuff. And it was really where I, kind of to Curtis's point, where I really picked up on some of the more technical elements of, let's say, construction and waiter and jacket and footwear and all that sort of stuff. And I had a really strong passion for that. But then, through that, spent my time there. And then, with similar to what Curtis mentioned, there's this opportunity at this brand that was, it kind of combined the two ends of my spectrum, at least from the career path. It was developing this really hardcore rugged gear for people that work at sea and that work on the water. And then also the passion for fishing, which I loved growing up. And it was an opportunity to build something special. And, with that is just kind of how I think I ended up here. And I look at it from, I can't explain it really any other way other than it seemed like the right time, the right opportunity to go build something special for a new brand, let's say in fly, but, with almost 100 years of heritage and just grit, from whether you're watching Deadliest Catch or something like that, or no commercial fishing. It was really cool. So that's what brought me here. I've been here for going on almost 2 years. So still fresh.
Yeah, it's very neat too, listening to your stories about, and it's interesting because I've talked to other people that have kind of gotten into roles like yours or similar roles in the industry. There are not a lot of them, and it's always amazing like how you have to be really determined and grind it out. It's kind of like, it reminds me of like getting rebounds in basketball. You just got to keep staying around the rim, and be relentless about it.
Absolutely.
It's very intentional, and I tell people that all the time. We've actually posted a category manager role over the weekend, so like my inbox is going to be blowing up here kind of in this next week. But I guess if anybody that's applying for that job is listening to this thing, it's it's intentional, and it's not something you just kind of accidentally find yourself doing one day. It for sure is like, wow, like you have to be really, I think, just engaged with like wanting to do it, because there's a lot of hours, and there's a lot of work and a lot of meetings and a lot of like you have to be really comfortable with failure, I think, and that's been the biggest part of the kids that I've seen come into this role, or the younger folks that are younger in their career, the ones that have gone on to be wildly successful, are the ones that aren't afraid to fail, and not, they don't see their failure as actually like a personal failure. They see it as a part of the process that like actually makes better product in the end.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that, because I have a 21-year-old and a 15-year-old son, and I'm always coaching them to learn how to fail faster. Right.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah.
Right. And so, Curtis, it sounds like you were kind of at ground zero when, Grundens decided to enter the fly fishing space. Can you speak a little bit to kind of, the opportunity that they saw in the industry and kind of the problems that they wanted to solve?
Yeah. And I'll back up even one level on that and say, go a level higher of sport fish. And, our brand launched into sport fishing in 2015, and, and I would say, it was a pretty rocky start to that category, it was, and I attribute that to, like the head of the product team was also the owner of the company, and he had a commercial fishing background. He was in this business because he loved commercial fishing, and he also sport fished. I think like his hobby was to go down to Baja and spend a ton of time fishing down there. And he saw the opportunity to take the brand. It was like an owner of the company saying, "Hey, I want to invest in this path, but I don't really truly know how to do it." Mike was for sure in it, like if he didn't know how to figure it out, he was gonna pick it up and carry the company on his entire back to get there, and that was just his style and the way it worked. And I think we're better off for those first few years in sport fishing today. Still, we learned a lot as a brand, and I think we're still learning a lot as a brand on like how to nuance this brand in that space. Around like when we I came out of a strategy session last I guess what was it, last Wednesday, and we put it like up on the board. We put like we win when we do Grundens right, we fail when we chase competitors. And that's kind of become like it, and it got actually thrown up in an all company meeting, and I was like, wow, that I didn't realize that had some, like, was so sticky around here. But yeah, I think like just trying to understand what it is that the consumer like, and it really truly isn't about us going into sport fishing. It's the consumer wanting that product from Grundens. That has to be consumer centric, consumer led, like fundamental shifts like this. Otherwise, you're going to spend a lot of money and you're going to fail. There were a lot of people that did believe in us as a brand. There's a lot of crossover, I think, from guys that have worked in the Bering Sea to folks that they'll come out of Alaska with a pile of cash and their money, and they're going to go live in Mexico for a little bit, and they're going to fish the way they want to fish. I think like the heritage there for sure kind of led us to there was a path forward for us in sport fishing that was around building rugged, durable goods, and building, like just enduring, lasting products that people could get at a value. And it really kind of resonated with the blue collar angler in a lot of ways. Since then, we've tried a lot of paths, a lot of different price points, a lot of different solutions. And like what typically has been the products that have been successful for us are the ones that kind of check the boxes around rugged, durable, really great price value relationships, and a meaningful product for the consumer. And I guess like we were selling, like we had rainwear, but it wasn't, I would say, pinnacle product in the market that we could go and, put out in the marketplace and realize that this was the best product that that we could possibly produce. And it was rather expensive for what it was. So we engaged Gore-Tex, as you know, that was like one of the kind of the first jobs that I had here at the company back in 18 was to build a proposal to Gore and go get a trademark license. And at Gore-Tex, you have to be licensed as a brand to be able to purchase the laminates and work with a certified factory. We launched the Gore collection in 2019. And that was really like that was the moment where there was everything before the Gore launch and everything after the Gore launch. Like it was a true inflection point in the business and sport fish for us. And it really got a lot of eyes on the brand. It enabled us to engage new ambassadors and new pros. It enabled us to open up new dealers. And kind of at the same time, we launched we basically expanded footwear into sport fish. So it was like a 1-2 like punch into the market. And I would say that the Gore launch and the footwear launch opened up enough doors and opened up enough new dealers and enough new buyers' eyes on our brand that the requests started coming of like, hey, like you guys build great product. You build bibs, you build Gore-Tex jackets. We want a wader from you. And, you know, and I was the last one that wanted to go build a wader. Like, honestly, I was like, guys, like we had these product roadmap meetings and strategy sessions, and waders were talked about for 4 years before we ever launched them. And it definitely turned into like, hey, like, let's get this right. Like let's not race into this market. And I think Jim and I know enough about making waders to know that it's like that the quickest way to fail in business is to go make waders. And we needed the momentum. I intentionally held the launch back of waders until I felt like that we had there was a tipping point, I think, around a number of dealers that were on board and a number of dealers that were asking. And I would say also just a general level of frustration with the competitive set out there that we would have to go. We knew we had to go take somebody off the wall in every single account. And that's a hard proposition, to walk in and say, all right, this wader is the best wader in the market. And what I need from you is to take one of those slots on your wall and give it to us, and I'll prove that we'll perform there. So I would say there's a lot of accounts that we're all in on that out of the gate, and we're still making that request, to a lot of dealers out there, and it's a hard proposition some days for some accounts, to see that, like, and the whole idea here is that we need to be accretive to the business. We don't want to come in and divide anybody's like revenue up by another SKU. We need to be, we need to show up, we need to perform, and we need to prove that our wader like resonates with the consumer and sells through. But I guess like at the end of the day, like it truly was a dealer led initiative for us, like where we were getting the requests were loud enough and frequent enough that we decided to kick off an R&D project in waders.
Yeah, that's super interesting. And as I hear you talk about that, I can certainly hear kind of the commercial fishing background of the company kind of coming through in the design philosophy about, durability, value driven. Cause I mean, these are blue collar guys out there making their money on, crab boats, fishing boats. And, if you can get them something that doesn't cost $2,000, that would be great. Right.
Yeah. I mean, that's the plan. And, to that point from a, design philosophy standpoint and harkening back, like our core is commercial fishing, and we want to continue and that we kind of run everything through this filter of sorts, and always ask the questions of why. Why is it important that Grundens has this product? Why are we making this? Like, why are we being asked for this? And we have to check ourselves often, and to your point earlier, it's about failing fast, and making sure that we have something that we can be proud of. It's all, and what we try to do as well is, we think of it more of, it's not necessarily timeless, but creating product that we know is going to outlast and outperform. And that's, running everything through that filter, checking, not afraid to push it off, to Curtis's point earlier, and making sure that, it checks the box of, really being, rugged and durable enough, but also approachable. I don't want to say it's easy to design the really high end, expensive stuff. You want a $2,000 wader? Sure. No problem. I can make that. it's the product that comes at that perfect balance of performance and value. That's the hard stuff. I don't know if there's anything you want to add there, Curtis.
Yeah, I mean, a $1,500 waiter would be a fun project. I mean, if we could go build spaceships, like with with government money on it, that would be fun. But it is every single detail is considered around how much does it cost, and I've pushed, I guess I pushed the development team a lot around, like there's a lot of great ideas, like in a design, I guess just in a design process of any product. The question comes down, I mean, the question that we all kind of have to hold ourselves accountable to is like, does that add value for the customer? And in a lot of ways, it's like a cool looking, a cool feature that's like, yeah, that's like really innovative or very unique. But is it something as an angler that I believe that the customer needs, or is going to make the angling experience better, or somehow help you catch more fish, or stay out and fish in worse conditions? And unless you can answer those questions, it's like that feature has to come out. And, it causes a great source of frustration with the team sometimes. But I mean, I do think that like when you get everybody pulling in the same direction around, hey, we're building consumer centric products here. And like, this is not art you hang on the wall. This is like a functional, this is a functional piece of gear that you need to put on your body and go fish with. I think it really starts to resonate.
Yeah, it's funny you say that. I've got some stuff. If you could see to my left, I've got like my tying table and all my video stuff. And, I have a handful of products that I would say are solutions looking for problems.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. And it's like, you're kind of cool, but like you look at it and you're like, gosh, like I just don't understand the use case for this,
Yeah. That happens often.
Yeah.
We're really prescriptive with that, though. I think, like we have a guy, the briefs I alluded to this morning were like, I owe Jim those this week. We like Jim and I work closely together in identifying who the customer is at it. Like from when an idea goes into paper, before we ever spend a single dollar on it, other than our, than our time. But when an idea goes on paper, it's like, who are we building this for? What problem are we intending to solve, and why does the customer need that from us? And that's the important one, because like I don't want to go build products that exist in the market today. Cause like, I know as if I was a retailer holding my open to buy dollar back and I've got to, whatever it is on the wall that's performing for me and putting money in my register, then I don't want to stop doing that and go do something else just because it says Grundens on it. I want this to be like every single product that we produce has to solve a problem or bring a unique value proposition to the buyer at a retail store and ultimately to the customer.
Very neat. And you mentioned earlier that, you were kind of waiting for the kind of some pent up demand to embark on the waiter project. How long did it take you to bring the Boundary waders to market?
Well, there was one day, and it was specifically mid-June of 2021, where we went from talking about making waders to making waders. And it was really specific. And it was a board meeting. And, like that's a point where like folks at Jim and my level of the company actually get to interact with the guys that own the company and, have real skin in the game through financial investment. And, like senior leadership, they interact with those guys like daily, once a week, whatever. We get these moments of board meetings where we get to that we're requested to show up, show what's in your pipeline, talk through the next, talk through the next 18 months of like innovation. And I remember a very specific directive, it was like, hey, it's time to make a waiter, guys. And we had, I had like 24 hours to go put a plan together on how much money we needed to kick off this project. And it wasn't like starting from scratch, right? Like, it's like, I've been thinking about this for years. I knew kind of what we needed to do. We just kind of got green lighted on it we got green lighted on it on a Tuesday. And by Wednesday, we needed to have a really concrete, well thought out plan. So that was a long night. And we came back the next day at the, day 3 of the board meeting and presented a roadmap, a strategy, and a plan, and asked for more money than I thought we needed because I didn't want to go back and ask twice. And we kicked that project off. And I would say within the next 60 days, we had design firms engaged. This is prior to Jim working here. So I was kind of flying blind with a designer at the time. We had a design firm that made a lot of our apparel, but we wanted to go, truly engage somebody that could get into the engineering side of these laminates and the engineering side of like the design of waiters. And ultimately that waiter project is the way that we were able to engage Jim. It was like the right order of operations would have been like, hey, we know in 6 months we want to start a project. So we're going to go hire the right designer to join the team. And we for sure, we had, carts pulling horses for a little bit there, but it all worked out great.
Yeah, it's like I say, you build the car while you're driving it, right?
Yeah. Well, this one's more like trying to fix an airplane while you're flying it, because if it crashes, it's way more of a there was no chance of failure, because I knew that credibility, the product team's credibility was on the line on this one. And when you and hard work gets rewarded with more hard work sometimes, and that was that was a moment of like, hey, we've got to go get after this and we got to get it right. We get one shot to launch these waiters. We can't fail.
Yeah. And it's interesting because I guess I first saw them, it would have been probably last June at an event that Davidson River Outfitters had, right? And Bob Clowers was there. And, I'd known Jeff Furman for 1,000 years because he'd been a guide with Kevin, and really got a walkthrough. And I think, it's interesting because you can talk to a lot of people in the industry, and you guys probably had this experience too, and you can tell who knows what time it is and who doesn't. And walking through what you differentiated in your product design was really impressive to me about thinking about the problems. And, I thought it'd be interesting if you guys kind of walk through those. Cause I don't think everyone's had a chance. I mean, if we're halfway through show season, so people have gotten a better chance, right, to put their hands on the waiters. But, there's just so many things. I don't know if Jim, you want to speak to this, and I kind of, off the top of my head, I think about the repairability issue.
Yep.
I'm a big guy, right? I'm 6'3". So mobility is awesome. The suspension system's amazing. The thought process and the gravel guards, all that stuff is awesome.
Yeah, absolutely. It part of, I think, behind building this assortment in general in waiters is really trying to future proof it. Our developer, Kristen Chandler, she did an amazing job working on really getting that movement out of the waiters. And we wanted to make sure that translated throughout the whole assortment. So I'll kind of touch base on some of the DNA, and then we can hop back to boundary, specific features. But to your point, we wanted to make sure that if you fit into a boundary or a vector or a bedrock, that you're getting the same fit. I think that's something that can get missed with other brands in the market right now of just, changing patterns, changing fit just a little bit, tweaking it here and there. And you don't necessarily know what you're getting between the previous waiter that you had and the new one. And so, we focused big time on mobility, making sure that you can get in and out of boats, up and over logs, making sure that you didn't have any issues or binding regardless of the material laminate thickness. The repairability is a huge one. I guess, we all know that, within the industry, there's waiters that leak and waiters that don't leak yet. And we really wanted to build this from a future-proof standpoint to say, hey, we've got this repairability program based in Seattle and then also based in the Carolinas, and with the ability to kind of send it in for repair, whether that's a patch, let's say you puncture your booties. That's a big one that we wanted to focus on, is having modular neoprene booties. So we have this nice gusset down there that actually allows it to articulate on its own, reducing the stress along those seams. But it also allows us to be swapped out. And really the thought process behind that is to keep you on the water longer, but also, a lot of times you'll see that, let's say you get a hole in your booties or something happens to the neoprene on the booties and you get swapped out a waiter. We want to make sure part of this whole initiative too of building durable product, and then also the sustainability aspect, is just keep your gear out there. It should be a little bit more of a badge of honor. It's interesting that it's not. You look at, let's say, climbing as an example, or anything outdoor, ski, snow, and you get a patch on your jacket and it's like, wow, that's cool. You really wore that thing. And fly fishing, it's not the case. It's like, oh man, those are beat up. I need a brand new pair. And we have to shake that as a mindset within the industry. And so I'm going off a little, I like tangents, so I'm going a little off there, but repairability is important. We partnered with some amazing neoprene out of Japan. Companies called Yamamoto. They build some of the best triathlon suits in the world. And we worked with them on this titanium alpha neoprene that kind of cascades throughout the DNA. So what that does is it helps regulate the temperature inside of your booty, keeping you warm, keeping the cold out by using 2 different titanium layers. And so you've got warming neoprene booties that solve a problem, right? Cold feet, they kind of suck. You go in there, you've got ice blocks, you're on the water less. We wanted to solve for repairability. So we have that with different, not only how we launched this wader with, 2 different centers and the partner that we're working with there, but also through, the repairability with the booties and how we're thinking about the construction from a suspender standpoint. And then, mobility. And those are 3 kind of DNA features that kind of cascade throughout all of it. Back to the boundary, we also really wanted to focus on suspension. And I'll actually let Curtis kind of hop in on this one, but it was really inspired from a climbing harness construction. And Curtis, you kind of lead the charge a little bit on the construction of that and how that kind of cascaded through.
Yeah, I guess the harness design, the suspension system design that we built in here. I mean, I guess they came from my personal frustration with everything I'd ever fished in. I thought there was an opportunity to really, to innovate in an area that was probably the most important point of contact with the body. And, like beyond like getting your pattern right, having mobility built into like the way that the actual wader itself articulates. The one piece of this thing that you're in contact with all day, and it really has consequences for how the wader fits your body, as well as how it fits with your layering system, your shell, and the fact that most anglers fish with some form of a pack, either backpack, sling pack, or or even a lumbar pack or slung over the shoulder. So it just really wanted to get kind of that part of it really right, and it really it saw it as I guess that was the chance to really innovate, beyond Gore-Tex does their innovation, kind of really in a silo, their R&D team, that they give us a proven laminate, and there's no like second guessing that. But I think with our ability to the things that we could focus on in this to really make a massive difference around how the consumer perception of comfort was really going to be, in the suspension system. And it's also kind of in the belt loops where those are placed. It's in how it's in a lot of the details of where those seams land on the body, are really around, there's a lot of I guess just fit theory that went into the entire kind of top to bottom system there. But yeah, we bought a couple of climbing harnesses and we cut them up to see kind of what was going on the inside. Having worked around the harness world for a little bit, things had changed a lot in the last 10 years. And just really understanding how we thought that the climbing harnesses were being constructed at a factory. So it was let's take this apart to understand how they put it together and then try to replicate that in a very opposite way. So the climbing harness is very static. It's designed to hold your body weight in a fall. We needed something that moved with you and be more dynamic. So we flipped the script on a couple of materials that are on the interior of it. And really it was about hey, how can this thing be constructed essentially inside out and then turned into its final form? And it was more of an exercise of trying to instruct a factory how to build something that they had never even seen before. But yeah, I think we got it right in a lot of ways. And I also, the ability to really place that suspension system fore and aft, up and down on the body was really, really unique, and not something that had ever been solved for in a pair of bibs or waders or any kind of lower garment ever in the world.
Yeah, it's amazing because I know, when you feel hunched over at the end of the day because you basically had kind of traditional suspender straps yanking on you. It's an amazing thing. And I would say too, from a thoughtfulness perspective, I was blown away at the Kevlar gravel guards, right? And the thought process about how that eliminates stress on one of the major leak points in the kind of where the wader joins the booty.
Well, I guess to back, we're not kept. We were testing a Kevlar gravel guard early on. It was so cost prohibitive that we couldn't pull it off. I mean, and we actually found a way better material in there. So it's the stretch woven that's on our pocket as well as on our gravel guard material comes from a supplier that I've worked with for the better part of a decade. They're our best supplier that we work with because they're always willing to innovate for us. And we threw the problem on the table of, hey, we want to take this stretch woven, we want to submerge it, for 8 to 10 hours a day, and it's got to hold up against the following like list of gremlins out there that are trying to take you down. And they kind of laughed for a moment and ran with it, and we got a great material. On the testing side of things, like we use we use like a Martindale as a kind of an industry standard test fixture. We use the Martindale and we use the Tabor to test a lot of our. The Tabor is like a tiny record player that's abrasive, typically 25,000 cycles on a Martindale is it's kind of getting there. It's not quite what we need, but it's at least a step in the right direction. We ran that gravel guard to 200,000 cycles and shut the machine off and said, I think we got a winner here. So yeah, like just having when you're at a list of 5 or 8 textiles that you're trying to whittle down to 2 and you want to do an A/B field test. That's you kind of have to fail fast in a lab. Otherwise you're going to be field testing forever and you might miss something. So, it's like, and to this day, our field test waders are still out there. I think that's a unique thing. Like we've got a number of field test waders that from that initial field test that are still going strong. Like asking a field tester to test to failure, especially when the new waders are in the market, they're like, when can I get one of those? I'm like, when you break the ones you got, you can have them. So yeah, there's a lot of the, maybe I'm probably jumping into the test side of this thing too fast, but that's, I guess, a little more of the process behind the curtain.
Yeah, no, it's super neat. And my understanding too is that material is a lot less grabby than neoprene. So those days of like wrestling with dropper hooks and things like that are maybe a little bit behind us.
Well, you can still snag a hook in it. Our head of sales got a steelhead fly hooked in his, and it turned out that thing might have had a barb on it. No, I don't. I'm joking. We pick he got a good snag out of it. I was like, hey buddy, like that's not a barbless hook. But he swore it was, and I trust him. He's a good guy. But when we go through the field testing, a lot of that stuff shows up, and I do agree. Like a lot of the kind of everybody in the world out there, I guess the 2 problems that I saw with gravel guards were one was like, if you're a shell fabric and you hop out of the river, it's like a bucket on your ankles and it fills the drift boat up pretty quickly. And by the end of the day, you got at least 10 or 15 gallons of extra water floating around at the bottom of the boat. The other is, like a neoprene gravel guard is kind of the industry standard out there. So it's like, let's just not do that because that's what the world expects us to do. And using that as an opportunity to innovate. And, I think what we gained out of this was, a more snag resistant, a more pick resistant gravel guard. It's not impervious to like the world out there, but it's better than I think what the industry, what you would expect from our peers out there. And then secondly, it allows us to build it closer. Like we can build it closer to the boot. So it's a better boot to wader interface. And I think that helps just over the long haul, keep a lot of the, like river gunk and just sand out of your boots. And the whole idea here is it's to give you long life use of your stocking feet.
Yeah, absolutely. And I do know, saw, I think some of these at the shows, and I was actually talking to my buddy at TCO, and, they're, I guess, on the cutting edge of getting some of the new wader lines, and now you're coming out with, the Vector and the Bedrock. And I was wondering if you guys could kind of tell us a little bit about kind of what the design differences are between, those 2 lines and the Boundary.
Yeah, I'll let Jim take it because Jim actually like that was, Jim's first round of waders with us here was the first order of business was go design 3 waders. and I think it also just speaks to him. He's been here 2 years, and those waders are just hitting retail now. So that's kind of the runway, like to give you visibility into how long it takes to actually get something from an idea to in a consumer's hand.
Yeah, and I would say that was still a fast timeline. You know, real quick on that timeline element. You know, we do vary from a standard. You know, it depends on how far out projects are. You know, and if we're being asked, you know, and if it's something that we can get there faster. You know, it can take 24 months, it can take 12 months, it can take 9 months, 18. It just depends. So, you know, the vector and bedrock waders for us, you know, we really wanted to take a step back and think about, you know, if someone were familiar with the commercial fishing side of it, talking bedrock initially at first, or sorry, vector. We wanted to approach it from, you know, the ingredients that make up the wader. You know, design, don't get me wrong, love design. But really, if you don't have a good base and a good foundation from the material and the laminate and really how you create that, it doesn't really matter, you know, how many bells and whistles and whatnot you have. So we wanted to build something that was rugged and felt as if it were good enough to stand up on a commercial fishing boat, to give you that sense. So the vector, what we did was we kind of created this unique laminate that we're really proud of and is really special. It gives you this really supple, softer hand, but it's a very dense, puncture resistant fabric. And so if you were to think of it maybe from let's just say like an apparel standpoint, it's like buying that fresh pair of jeans and versus having a worn pair of jeans. And you're always going to go back to that worn. So we wanted to create this fabric package that felt like it was already broken in, which a lot of times when you go with those heavier, more puncture, more abrasion resistant materials, they get really stiff fast. And so, starting with that, again, we wanted to bake in the same DNA. So we knew that, we wanted the warming neoprene, we wanted the repairability, we wanted the same fit. And then from there, it was really trying to figure out what was the right level of feature benefit. And, you know, not creating features or pockets or details that you don't necessarily need. And that's kind of how we work from both, the bedrock and the vector. And the unique element of it is I call them T-Rex arms, but almost all of the stocking foot waders out there have a horizontal zip, you know, to kind of access. You kind of have your dump pocket, but you go in and you're really looking at, all right, let me fish this out of the corner and let me get that. And you kind of can get stuff lost in there. It's a great way to do it, but we thought about it a little bit differently and said, hey, you're wearing a jacket. Most jackets have a vertical zipper. Why not put a vertical zipper down the front? And in all honesty, it was pretty polarizing at first when we got it into the field testing. And it was like, whoa, what is this? This looks really strange. And as you know, the industry, as far as fly fishing goes, it does move relatively slow. So, it was a little polarizing, but the idea was that, hey, you have ambidextrous storage. You can go left, you can go right. You just have a straight vertical zip. You can store fly boxes, anything you need kind of in that center section. And we wanted to create that as part of the DNA element. And so, you know, hand warming pockets, we've got adjustability. We took the suspension system from some of our sport fishing bibs and we implemented that. So again, you have this, we're thinking about suspension differently, from a vector. So make sure that it's comfortable. And then we also have these really low profile, knee pads in there, because once you kind of wear, it's kind of like wearing a zippered wader. Once you wear a wader with knee pads, you kind of don't really want to go back. And it's less about kneeling on gravel, and your rocks and landing fish. And it's also about getting in and out of boats and, you know, leaning up against a gunnel or something like that and really making sure that, you've got that. And we want our waders, I think in general, Vector and Bedrock, and I'll touch on Bedrock real quick. The idea is that these transcend beyond just fly fishing too. I think that's one of the elements that makes our brand unique. And so we want to make sure that it's not just built for a river, and it's not just built for fly fishing. And so the Bedrock carries all of that same DNA, but does it in a more, a really tried and true 4-layer laminate as well. And it doesn't have I would say it's a great blend of the mobility, the comfort, and the breathability that you might find from the Gore, and having a little bit of that shared ruggedness from the Vector, and creating this really great value proposition. And really the Bedrock's the first handshake for us, and viewing the product in that way of saying, hey, if someone's new to the brand, they want to try us, they don't necessarily, want to invest in these different tiers, or maybe they're not as rugged, or they don't want the premium features that show up in the Gore-Tex, then this has to perform. It has to be good on fleets. It has to be good for rentals. It's the wader that, shows up at a lodge and you've got 15 of them on the wall, and it's just for people to wear if they don't bring it. And we approach it that way. So similar kind of features, as far as storage pockets go, not as water resistant from a storage pocket standpoint, and no knee pads. So it's a different type of use case, where the Vector is really built for guides and rugged, briar busting, I don't care about what I'm wearing. And then the Bedrock is really built for more of an all around approach to angling, and helping that, let's just say, like more of a weekend warrior, or I'd say weekend warrior is probably a good one. What do you think, Curtis, for Bedrock? I mean, it's a great wader.
I've been at these fly shows that we've been hitting recently. I've been positioning that as a 10-day a year angler, and I think there's a lot of people out there that really appreciate good gear. They have a million other hobbies, right? Like they might be playing golf, they might be like might be surfing, whatever it is. But fly fishing is something that they've just gotten into, or they do it when they take their annual trip to Montana, or they do it when they get together with family on on a week at the lake or whatever. So and like we wanted to kind of make the range approachable. So obviously, yeah, it's built for hardcore use, but the total number of days that you will get out of a Bedrock relative to a Vector's built to be the 200 a year day guide, the ultimate in durability. We also take that Vector chassis and we build a special model for rental fleets as well. So if lodges, and our primary customer, that does the rental is a lot of Alaska lodges really will dive into a rental wader program, because I think a lot of people like look at like, hey, I want to go to Alaska to fish, and they end up they may be a great fly angler, they may kind of just have gotten into it and not, they don't have the gear, and they've left the box store with their $129 pair of waders, or they've got an old pair of neoprene waders that they think work great until you get to kind of the hardest environment on earth to go wade in. And Alaska rivers are brutal. I mean, I think like that's a different kind of, it's a different frontier up there of like what you need to bring to the party if you're gonna have a successful week at a lodge up there. So yeah, we've had a lot of interest in a rental program from us, and I think like retail shops are going to slowly get on board with that as well. Of like, hey, we can offer a really great experience for somebody that's coming to spend a day with us, on a guided trip. And I think a lot of people just show up with old gear, and it's like, hey, today's a great day to try something new, and you're gonna get better at casting, you're gonna get better at fishing, and you might as well have a great experience doing it.
Yeah, and I think the great thing too, not just for waders, but is to have the gear get out of the way, right? Just like let you fish, and not have a bad day because you're in swampy neoprenes or you've got old gear. Or, I mean, to be perfectly honest, I would love to just know that places that I wanted to travel to fish had it, so I didn't have to pack it and keep it up and spread it out and dry it all out when I got home.
Yeah, there's nothing worse than flying home with wet waders, like, and boots. Um, you have a great week, but then you ultimately want to get that last morning in before like you have to leave, and you always end up packing a wet pair of waders in a bag, and everything's really gross when you get home. But that's maybe that's the defining moment of a trip of like, I got every minute out of this that I could.
Yeah, I always take several black trash bags with me for exactly that purpose.
There you go. And real quick on I guess our ethos and design really behind that, and our products in general. It's a lot of people plan for the worst, but we build for the worst. And that's really the approach and how we filter it through. And those waders are a good example of the evolution of that.
And I would say too, looking at your products and talking to some of the guys in the booth in Denver, I can see the same thoughtfulness in the design process in your rain gear and your wading boots. And I was wondering if you guys wanted to kind of talk about a little bit of that, because I thought some of that stuff was incredibly neat, like the thought around, like the double flaps on the zippers and things like that, so that it just shows kind of an understanding of what the elements will do and how they create problems for you when you're on the water.
Yeah, absolutely. Curtis, why don't you take that one?
Okay.
I think you'll have a good bit to add there.
Yeah. So the double storm flap, I guess it's been somewhat of a non-negotiable design feature for us on outerwear. I guess it dates all the way back to the fact that our commercial jackets, the brig jacket has been around since the 60s. And it's had a double storm flap on it since then. And the belief is that, our belief personally, from not just making this up, but from testing, is that the only way to really keep somebody dry on the inside is to have a storm flap over a zipper. It's, like if you're standing in a river and it's raining, you can get away with an exposed zipper. You're never going to notice the difference. But like when you take this thing kind of to the next level, and you're running in an open console boat, for our Gore-Tex outerwear line, if you're a guide running in a jet sled in BC, Canada, or anywhere that's raining hard and you've got motor driven rain, you're going to get wet through that zipper. So we take the design approach of saying our have to have in this jacket is a storm flap, and then let's just do that in a very elegant way, so it doesn't get in the way. It's easy to access in and out of, and you might not even know it's there. The only thing you'll know is that you're not wet. And then with the boot program, I guess we just saw the insanity in the wading boot world, like kind of like the leapfrogging of technology and price points that was going on was like kind of getting out of hand. And you sit around and you're like, where do we want to be and how do we want to define this brand within wading? And I guess I thought the way I thought through it, from a hey, what are we going to build here, is they're like metal hardware was a have to have. There's going to be like no chance plastic hardware was going to make it anywhere in the wading boot line. But it had to be corrosion resistant. And then we just wanted to build a really well reinforced classic leather boot. And leather presents a set of problems in the river. Like old school leather boots shrink, and even leather boots from 10 years ago shrink. So we went through the process of identifying a waterproof leather that could be submerged in water and go through wet dry cycles, like throughout the life of the boot, and not give you an experience of where that boot's going to shrink on you, or you have to like oversize the boot with the whole idea that the first time you wear it, it's going to shrink up on you. And then we partner with Vibram on the kind of midsole and outsole chassis, kind of lower, like the lower unit on that boot is all Vibram. And we designed it to accept, our hexa grip stud and cleat pack. So like basically just give you one solution to completely stud that boot out for traction on like slippery rivers. So, I think if you get a chance to look at our wading boot, you'll notice that it's got a lot of like burly rubber overlays on there that come out of the kind of the mountaineering and climbing world. The leather on it's really nice. Like we over invested in leather on there just to make sure you would have a good quality nubuck that holds up for, the life of the boot. And, even in going as far as to taking all the hardware and embedding those on the, basically the hardware attachment points are all internal in the boot. So there's not, rivets or, attachment points like on the inside of the boot that wear through your stocking foot faster. So yeah, thoughtful design for sure on kind of how that executed. And, and I think the other thing is like, we really tune the way that boot flexes in the water. So like not trying to build, a replica of what already existed in the market from a very almost Herman Munster boot, if you will. Yeah. I mean, it's the flex profile is really well engineered into it. So the feedback that I've gotten from a lot of dealers and a lot of testers on it is it's the most comfortable boot to wade in because of the way that we engineer that the ball break of the foot and engineering proprioception, which is basically your brain's ability to feel kind of what's under your foot in the river, and it kind of just helps to drive the natural balancing process that your body does.
Yeah, it sounds like it would make for a better wading experience. I mean, because at least for me, I'm a big guy, so I wear a size 13, right? Mm-hmm. So I feel like I'm Frankenstein when I'm in the water, and I don't always feel like I have a really it's not that I'm not in contact, but I don't feel like my feet are seeing like they would normally see if I was wearing another type of shoe and I wasn't in the water.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. We need to get you a pair to test. Like, I think you'll like that it would be interesting to do a follow up to this podcast of like wear our waders and boots for another, like wear them for a season. And like at the end of the summer, come back and do a follow up.
Yeah, it would be cool. It's funny too, because I was talking to your guys in Denver and about whether I'm an XL or an XL King because of the way your suspension system works. Mm-hmm. And had a long kind of philosophical conversation about like I layer on top of my waders because I want to capture that heat, right? Mm-hmm. I also don't want rain to I don't. People can do whatever they want to, but I've never understood why you would wear a rain jacket underneath your waders so that you were just catching all that water and letting it run down into your clothes. Mm-hmm. But just trying to kind of, calibrate that out and think about like I fish anywhere from, trout in the Carolinas, which both of you guys know is not like a super cold water jam, except for maybe 2 weeks in February, up to steelhead fishing, which is the coldest I ever am in my entire life. So.
And we're closer to the steelhead, I guess, world, because that's home base for us out in the Pacific Northwest. And for better or worse, our testing gets, a lot of the testing gets done out on the Olympic Peninsula. I got a great picture of Jim wearing a jacket that's coming out next year. And, you want it to fail on like the internal team first before it even makes it to a field tester. So like he had a pretty rough day with a leaky jacket that we had a lot of learnings out there, but it was raining like 2 inches an hour. And for sure, like one of the rainiest days I've ever been through on the OP. And there's just not enough you don't have enough gloves in your backpack to make it through the day. And you're just like constantly rotating from the wet gloves to the less wet gloves that are somewhere in the bottom of the pack. And it just, you get to the end of the day and you're like, Jim takes his jacket off and he's like, wow, look at this. I've got stripes. And we ended up making like an immediate design change that even, that before these things even made it to like a sample that a rep gets, and something that we do kind of advanced field testing. But those learnings, are fun. I enjoy, especially when I'm the one that's not getting wet and the designer is.
Yeah, that was a good one. And I mean, to that point, it's failing fast, right? It's like, hey, we just got this prototype in. Let's go get it on the water. It was a monsoon. And, within 10 minutes, I'm like, oh, well, this sucks. I've got another 6 hours of this. Like, we'll figure it out, but glad we found out.
It's not an exaggeration. It rained 12 inches of water that day out there. It was, I mean, like until you experience it, you can't like even comprehend, because it almost sounds like a tall tale.
Yeah. But, the amazing thing is, Curtis, it sounds like you and I are maybe roughly the same vintage. When I was coming through scouting in Virginia, like there was no Gore-Tex, right?
The military had it, but you for sure didn't have it as a scout.
I mean, yeah, the doctor's kids didn't even have it, right? So like it didn't exist. And, the idea of like having those like super heavy hiking boots that you put the Snowbee water sealant on. And, back then the Boy Scout way was to wear a pair of tube socks with a wool sock on top. And I like my boys complain now. I was like, guys, like you just have no idea how much better the materials and the gear are today than they were, 40, 50 years ago.
Oh yeah.
I vividly remember going to like a camperee out on it was in Virginia Beach, and it was out on like, I want to say it was like Fort Story, kind of out like on the north end of Virginia Beach. Like we drove up for that, and it was a pretty, like those scout days were a miserable camp experience. I feel bad for anybody that didn't like there's probably a ton of kids that just never went camping because their experience in scouting with mediocre gear was just like, wow, this sucks. But I made the commitment to my family is like, we're going to have great gear. We're going to have a good time, and we're going to overinvest in making sure everybody's warm and dry and comfortable when we're on the river. And it's made I think it's made a big difference for, I've got 3 boys between the youngest turned 8 today and the oldest is 14. And they don't know what it's like to go through a rough night of camp in a cotton filled sleeping bag and being wet and cold because they've always had great gear. And maybe I'm starting to sound like a curmudgeon now. You just don't know what it's like. But I just don't want them to have to go through that, because I want the outdoors to be such a good experience for them. It's something that they fall in love with and they want to do with their kids down the road. And I guess maybe it's also selfish. I just don't want to hear them play.
Yeah, there you go. One of the interesting things is, obviously Grundens has moved into fly fishing, but I would say probably one of the interesting opportunities is your fly anglers have become aware of all the other products that were in the Grundens universe. And I was kind of curious, what are the favorite kind of traditional Grundens products that have made their way into the hands of fly fishermen that they seem to really like and buy a lot?
Well, I think the notion of the fly angler is it's somewhat manufactured by the industry, and I'll go down the road of like, because I think everybody like, and granted, I do get there's people that are fly only, like dry fly or die guys out there, and I salute you. But I think the majority of the people out there are anglers first, and they've found a love of fly fishing because of its challenge or because of the unique kind of, you've arrived at a level of angling by fly fishing because it's going to test your skill as an angler. But ultimately, I think everybody, if presented with the opportunity to go catch and harvest fish, they're going to do that. And I think, like the opportunity to say, hey, we're going to go on a tuna trip, or we're going to go, like we're going to go and we're going to be in Alaska. We're going to go harvest halibut because I love to eat halibut, and I'm up here and I get to fly home with like 100 pounds of fish, and it's going to be amazing. So I do think the catch and consume angler out there is really our core customer in a lot of ways. And they may be fly, and that same person, like they may be swinging a barbless hook on a tube fly for steelhead one weekend, and also out like trolling for salmon in the Columbia River, and like we had an internal joke of like knowing when to bonk them, and it's like when to keep a fish wet and to treat it like it's like a revered species of like, hey, we got to let this guy go and not hurt it at all, because it's got to go spawn, it's got to go make baby fish so we can continue the cycle. And then when it's like, hey, there's an abundance of food fish here, and let's like this fresh salmon is going to provide protein for the family, we're gonna this one's going to the table, boys. But I guess I digress a little bit there. I do think that like a lot of our PU and PVC is kind of how we got into sport fishing. Like just like if you need blood and guts impervious material, rubber pants are the only way to get it, and it's stain 100% stain proof. The world's been talking a lot about PFAS in the last 18 months, and it's going to talk even more about it in the next 12 and the next 24. We're the original kind of PFAS free brand with our PVC and PU coated materials. They've never had PFAS in them, and they're also they don't rely on PFAS to keep for water beating performance. So that's a unique thing, like the building gear that really is hose down rinsable and allow you to like go and process a fish or catch a nasty fish, or actually use live bait, like is kind of they'll make your fancy bibs really gross really quick. So we have both. We have the really nice Gore-Tex for you. We also have the really basic PU coated stuff for you. And I do think, and I think beyond, like I would say that world, our Tough Sun solar series that's launching here. It'll be available in 10 days. It's been the best pre-booked solar program that we have. It's UPF 50. You can get about 5 days out of it on the river without it starting to stink because of some performance finishing we use. It's the only sun shirt on the market with a 100% no questions asked lifetime guarantee, because we believe in the durability so much on it. So, there's a lot of stuff out there that's adjacent to our fly category that really resonates kind of on that next ring out of anglers that really are the broader community that we want to like speak to.
Yeah, and I really like your deck boots, right?
I totally forgot deck boots. Yeah, and you're absolutely right. I probably should have led with deck boots because that is the one. I mean, I think deck boots have become in vogue in a lot of ways. A lot of people just wear deck boots these days, and I'll see them in the city a lot of like, wow, like we somehow found that customer right there, and they would have never found us any other way other than searching for rubber ankle boots. And like when you get to the details of why we beat the competition, it turns into a sale. But we do sell a lot of boots. Like our boot business is, it started pretty like 5 years ago. It was a tiny piece of the business. It's grown to a significant business unit and would be a standalone business or brand on its own from the volume of boots that we do. And it's pretty rad to see. Like, I mean, I'm just happy because I know like every person that buys a boot from us is going to have a better day on the water.
Yeah, that end of the day solution to me is always something I'm always trying to figure out. Like, when you're in the parking lot in Montana and like you want to go and what's the quickest, fastest way and all that sort of stuff. And so, love the boots. I've tried all kinds of different solutions around that. And, it's great to just be able to, it's important to get off the water and start drinking beer as quickly as possible. Right.
There you go. Boat to bar.
Boat to bar. It's well, I think do you ever fish the Madison River?
I do.
Well, we actually have a new, well, I don't want to let the cat out of the bag yet. I'm going to park that at that. There's a product name and it's, I'm oversharing. So I'll stop at that.
Fair enough. But I'll make another pass at you. You've got sun shirts coming out here in the next 10 days. Any other things in your development pipeline you want to share with our listeners before I let you guys go?
Yeah. We have a series of rainwear fly jackets that integrate with the waders really well. Even, so the jacket's called the Portal. It's a portal because it's like you can pass through to the next level of warmth, achieve a higher level of comfort out there. But it also allows you like access. So the whole idea is this jacket is Gore. It's got the dunkable cuffs from our Buoy X line. And our, we learned a lot of things with the Gambler project for the professional bass anglers. And we kind of married the two of those up in a way that just really, we took kind of the best of both of those jackets and we built perfect jacket for somebody that's in the river. So 100% waterproof. You'll get our tried and true storm flap system, but then there's a pass-through pocket inside the hand warmer pocket to keep your hands warm. And this was specifically what leaked on Jim last year, 12 months ago, was like, getting that right was really detailed around like drainage and the right zipper in there and the right zipper angle for diverting water away. And with all of our Gore jackets, we have to send them to the rain room for an extreme and extended wet weather test. So they have to pass a standard of 22 inches an hour. It's something that like hunt and fish from Gore have to, like we have a higher level of test parameters than say an outdoor or snow sport company hits. So we hit the extreme and extended water, the rain room test on everything that we produce as Gore-Tex. I mean, we learn a lot along the ways. They're a massive development partner for us, to be able to walk out of a co-development between Grundens and Gore-Tex and say, this jacket's guaranteed to keep you dry for the life of the garment. That's a powerful statement to tell a consumer. And we're really putting our money kind of where our mouth is on it. And, I'm comfortable saying that because I know the work that goes into the design and development of the details and the nuance of the, like the tiniest detail on that jacket is scrutinized.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll throw in there we've got a good mid layer coming in hot as well.
Yeah.
Good system coming in, probably more obviously within the fall timeline, but you can expect that. And it's just a great layering system that will keep you warm. and comfortable without getting too bulky. That coupled with the portal is a great day on the water.
Yeah, very, very neat. It's funny you say that because I have one of my favorite pieces is actually an REI down vest, but if you get wet, you're kind of screwed. So,
Oh yeah,
good to see that there's some options coming out. And I guess, we're probably roughly, depending on where you are, about halfway through show season. Curtis, are you guys going to be kind of still racking up the frequent flyer miles, hitting the shows as we kind of come into the home stretch of March?
Yeah, it's been really fun. We've been trying to divide and conquer as a team. Not only not to try to grind any one of us to a pulp throughout like January, February, March, but also just to give other teammates the ability to go and interact with consumers. Because I think that like those shows the reason that we're there. I mean, I think if you're showing up there as a brand to try to push a product to a customer, you're there for the wrong reason. And my wholehearted belief is like we're there to talk to our customer and to learn. And we do that through obviously like what looks like a retail environment, but it's pretty interesting. Like we don't transact at that show. We don't sell it. We don't sell a single thing. We give away stickers, we give away hats, we give away advice. And we're happy to like kind of partner with dealers there. So, like you mentioned TCO, like TCO is a great partner up at the Edison show. In Denver, we had Blue Quill, we had Eds that were both selling waders. In the Atlanta show, I didn't personally make the Atlanta show, but Kristen, our wader developer, did along with our sales crew. And Fishhawk, Alpharetta, and Davidson all had booths there, and they were all selling waders. It's great to see. It's great to see how like I also love the fact that like you've got everybody in one room, and you get a really, as a consumer, when you go to these fly shows, they're super valuable. Because if I was going to go buy a wader, I want to be able to go hit everybody and understand like who's going to support me as a customer, who's going to support me if I'm walking up to you with $900 to spend on a pair of waders, that's a lot of money. That's a whole, I mean, even like we're all fairly advanced in our careers, and like none of us are wealthy, but none of us are like, we're not struggling anymore at this point in our lives. But $900 purchase is a lot for me, and it's a considered thing, and it's something that I'm going to go to, like, I'm going to do my research, and I want to know what I'm getting, and I want to know the company is going to stand behind me as a customer. And we show up to these shows to really say, hey, we're new to this. I know you may not know who we are, or you may think of us as the orange bib brand out there, but it was a really impactful consumer interaction. I mean, there are hundreds of customers I talked to personally, and kind of went through this whole process that we've gone through here in the last hour or so around like why we do what we do and how we do it differently. And then I think, like the feedback that I've gotten from our dealers is like, they're really appreciating the effort that we put forth at those shows. So those shows will be a big part of our strategy going forward. I think it's a chance to engage your customer at a one-on-one conversation and learn something, and I think like the moment you stop learning in this job, the moment that you're either growing or you're dying. And like we're here as an entire organization to go like to listen to the customers.
Yeah, I would tell you from a consumer perspective, and I mean, I know I live in a weird place as a fly fishing consumer because I've done other stuff in the industry, but it's very compelling to me when you see a new brand and you talk to someone and it's not like, hey, this is our high end, medium end, and low end wader, this, and this. It's like, here are the problems we solved, and let me show you. And this is like, I see you, this is your size. Like you would be an XL King or maybe an XL. It depends. And you literally walk through all these features and you're like, for me as a consumer, you take that away and you're like, holy shit, these guys have like really thought about this a lot. Right. And I think to make that investment, that makes it a whole lot easier, at least from my perspective, when you have that kind of interaction and feedback.
And that was what we're going for. I think it wasn't accidental to show up there kind of with that approach to waders. We've got a great, Ben, our VP of sales, and I work really closely together, all in on the marketing side of things. We all were really well aligned going into this thing around, like supporting retail, engaging consumers, giving away a hat. And, it's hard to put and like, it's pretty interesting too, like the other, like in the digital world, the marketing is very different these days. In the digital world, you spend a lot of money to engage a customer, and I mean, you can spend between $6 and $8 to have somebody land on your website for 90 seconds maybe. And the return on investment on that spend, like, I mean, obviously there's guys that's just full-time job to track those metrics, and, return on ad spend, return on investment of digital activations and things like that. Like our approach on this one, was like, hey, let's just go analog, and let's give a hat away. And that hat's going to cost us roughly $6. And that's less than what I would pay to engage a customer as a brand, to get somebody to go to our website and spend, whatever amount of time they're going to spend there. And I think in the long run, it's going to pay off from a like, yeah, I mean, that the Cappy Hour process that's going on across the country is a massive spend for us. Like we're with like, but at the end of the day, I think it's going to be you have a qualified customer that's standing at your booth and they're interested in who you are and what you do. And like, there's no better way to take somebody for 30 seconds while that press cooks and say, this is what we do. We're anglers, you're angler too. And like, this is why we do the things that we do. And, it's for sure the long run investment for us, like in those shows.
Yeah, it's funny you say that, because I think, and we could do an entirely different show, so I will stop after I say this. I think that analog approach and kind of this new AI digital noise world is going to become more and more powerful.
Absolutely. It's the human element, right? It's like, let's be humans and let's talk.
Yeah. And it's kind of crazy, but I think that's going to be the superpower, right?
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, digital devices are the new smoking. And I think we're going to see the consumer recoil back from that. And, it may take 5 years, it may take 10 years. I already see it with my kids, like the just the anti-social media, like that the younger generation is engaging. And if you're building a brand around social media engagement, like right now today, you better be figuring something out for the future, or else you're going to, that's from my seat. I think that's the losing battle over the long haul. It's paying dividends now, but if you're trying to set this thing up for long haul, it's really these kind of moments that matter with the customer. And if we could have poured beers at those shows, we would have. I think that like, you're a little bit handcuffed with the exhibition center there wants to sell you a $9 beer. And if we could have given away a beer and a hat, I think that's like the kind of the most core that an angler, like what angler doesn't need a beer or a hat? And both of those things kind of go hand in hand with fishing.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll put this to the side. Maybe I have to do a marketing or a digital media series. We can come back and talk about some of this stuff, because it's one of my obsessions in podcasting about how to be authentic and respect your listeners. And I think it flows through with whatever you're selling, right? And I think it's, and I'm kind of a weirdo, so I'm a Gen Xer. So I live in a world where I love technology, but I didn't have it around all the time. And so I have a very different kind of thought process around it. And, Curtis, to your point, it's interesting watching my kids navigate this. And, I've literally seen them when they were little sitting on a sofa, texting with the person that was sitting next to them. And I was like, guys, this is crazy. Right.
Yeah. They're like, mine are a little younger. My oldest is 14, but there is a time where they all sit in the corner of a room together playing Minecraft together on separate tablets, but I'm like, guys, I guess for me, like, it was Battleship, right? Like, when you got electronic Battleship, you were like that was the moment you had arrived as a gamer in the 80s.
Yeah, well, that's even before you get to old school Dungeons and Dragons. But we could talk about like Risk and Stratego.
Oh yeah, Stratego. Oh man, sign me up.
And Monopoly. But I'll pull us back from dropping into this rat hole. Maybe we can continue the conversation some other time. Guys, what's the best way? So check show circuit. You guys are going to be, I'm sure, doing the rest of the Feremsky shows. I would imagine you might be at some regional shows as well. What's the best way in addition to that for people to kind of follow what's going on at Grundens and kind of stay in the loop?
Well, I'm a big advocate that our retailers are the best way to find out what we're doing. And I say that, and I probably will get called out for the statement. But I do think that, I do think that like a brand's a brand's digital reach, as a retailer only goes so far, and especially in equipment when it comes to fishing. I think, like fly shops are the core of the community in this market. And if you like, if I want to go buy a new rod, I think you've got to walk into a fly shop. You got to be able to cast it. And I think there's no difference for like trying on gear or trying on a pair of waders. The fit of a wader is such a nuanced, like it's like it's the nicest suit you own in your closet. Like I don't own a suit that's $900. I have a blazer. That's kind of like the extent of it. But I do think that the level of service that you get out of walking into a shop to try something on and be able to experience that, and then just to be able to get the knowledge of like where to go fish as a angler, the fly shop is still the cornerstone. And I think it's what makes fly fishing so unique is the reliance on brick and mortar retail. We have a dealer locator on our website to enable you to go find our waders. Like I guess, if your listeners are primarily Southeast based, the Atlanta market would be Fishhawk, Alpharetta, Davidson River, kind of up in the Asheville, Pisgah area. Like those guys have bought into our program deeply, and I would encourage you guys to go spend time to go at that shop, because they're all really good people. And I think, like when I in my experience there too is, like just like even as a vendor to those guys, I was at that Davidson River event, and we're talking to customers there, but the next day, like Kevin Howell was like, "Hey man, like go fish our water. You should go check it out." And just the ability to like go and give you like they have like such special experiences that are attached there, that like if you go and get get their pay their day fee, go fish their water. It's a really beautiful piece of water that flows through Pisgah. And like those kind of things are really amazing to me. It's like you don't really get that in like the large box experience of fishing.
Yeah. Kevin does a phenomenally good job. And I think his private water is awesome. And it's not like some of the zoo water in North Georgia. And then I would say my insider secret when I go over there fish is you owe it to yourself to go to the Sierra Nevada Brewery and sit outside and enjoy some beers and some food. That's a really cool way to do it.
It's a great spot.
We might have done that 3 or 4 times on that trip. It was it is pretty cool though, because they do have beers that you can't get.
Mm-hmm.
Sierra Nevada is like kind of nationwide now. I was really impressed with I live in Bend, Oregon. We're like kind of West Coast beer capital out here. I was super impressed with like how Asheville has kind of grown up since I was going there in college to mountain bike a lot. The beer culture is so unique and so good. Like if I had to pick a city to live in on the East Coast, it would be hands down Asheville in a minute. If I told my wife we're moving to Baltimore, I'm probably quickly getting served divorce papers. But Asheville, I think, is a really rad town. And we went through there with family this past summer, and she was like, "Wow, I can't believe like how cool this place is now." And the restaurant, it's got a vibrant restaurant scene. It's got maybe I sound like I'm pitching Asheville more than my waiters, but it is a really cool place. And I think it's like, if you're an angler and you live on the West Coast, it's worth a trip out there, because I think it's such a unique fishery. And take the 3-weight and go fish dries on some, brook trout water, or if you go on Kevin's water, you better be packing a 6-weight. There's some bruisers in there.
Good smallmouth and good muskie too. I would also say this will be my last Asheville pitch. Another thing to do is if you like live music, if you can do fly fishing, a show with the Orange Peel, and you can eat dinner before at Wicked Weed, which is just across the street. That's a pretty good way to spend a few days too.
Oh yeah,
Wicked Weed's beers are amazing. They're that was probably one of the more impressive breweries I walked into. Just like good food, kid friendly, great beer.
Yeah, so I think we've got that figured out, and I know we've kind of dissed a little bit on social media, but I would imagine that you probably do. You can throw out your URL. I'll drop it in the show notes, but I would imagine you're probably on Instagram and a few other places too.
Yeah, but my name's Curtis Graves, like at Curtis Graves on Insta. And Grundens, Grundens has we do have a social presence. I guess like see it as more about inspiring people. Our brand is about inspiring people to go fish and providing kind of updates to folks on, new product intros. I think, and we obviously run a business like direct to consumer too, but I intentionally when you said the best place to try on waders, I do think that the regional, your local fly shop is the spot of, like you're going to get the best fitting experience. You're going to have somebody to like when there's a problem, you've got an accountable person to go back to and say, hey, like, and we're here to, like we obviously have a really robust warranty program. Our warranty center is not far from Asheville. It's in Old Fort. Pretty unique, for another show, but the investment that's going into American made textiles and American made cut and sew apparel again at Old Fort's really, really interesting. The state of North Carolina and the city of Old Fort have put a lot of dollars behind trying to bring back kind of the craftsmanship of apparel making in America there. And it's getting off the ground, but I would speculate in the next 5 to 10 years, Old Fort's going to be a household name within the outdoor industry.
Yeah, which is very neat. And for listeners that don't know, in addition to having a vibrant furniture industry, that North Carolina has been known for having a very, very strong textile industry, which obviously has really suffered with globalization. But, to your point, people have either been trying to resuscitate the industry or repurpose the buildings and the facilities. So that's kind of an interesting part of the Tar Heel State.
Yeah, and NC State's got North Carolina State has the best, hands down, the best textile, continuing education, undergraduate and bachelor's degrees and master's degrees in textile engineering. Some of the best people in the industry that I know that are like at the top of their game in textiles have either gotten a degree from NC State or have gone back for continuing education programs. And it's it's sponsored heavy by Cotton Incorporated. A lot of dollars. Like it takes philanthropy to have a program like what those guys have, and Cotton Inc. has done a really good job of supporting them. But they do get out into technical textiles as well. And myself, our materials team, at competitors that we've talked about, all have spent time at those at kind of in continuing education courses there. And it's really cool to walk into a class as a competitor and not know who's going to show up. And there's a person from Black Diamond there. There's a person from Sims that's across the table from you. And you go through this as, like you realize at the end of the day that none of us have this figured out, right? Like we're all constantly learning, what's happening and how to get an edge up on the competition through material science. And the best way to do that is go educate yourself. And it's pretty rad. It's a very small industry.
Yeah, it's the niche of the niche of the niche. And, guys, I really appreciate you taking some time out of your workday. And Curtis, I super appreciate you, getting online with me at 8:00 in the morning, kids or no kids. I appreciate it. And I've been really looking forward to this interview for a while, and, look forward to our paths crossing at shows and hopefully on the water sometime soon. Have a great rest of your day and tight lines.
Absolutely. You too.
Thanks, Marvin. Thank you for having us on.
Well, folks, I hope you enjoyed that as much as we enjoyed bringing it to you. Again, if you like the podcast, please tell a friend, and please subscribe and leave us a rating and review in the podcatcher of your choice. And don't forget to head over to www.nor-vice.com to check out Norvice's show schedule and all of their great products. Tight lines, everybody.